Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm the Business Development Specialist here at Sologic. Welcome to our webinar. Today we'll be discussing measuring return on investment in organizational learning, which includes RCA. And speaking today, we have Brian Hughes. He's our president and co-founder. I just wanted to plug in that for our webinar, we host this on a bi-weekly basis. And we also host in-person and virtual public seminars. So Brian will be teaching a public course, which is public seminar next month in person at Tacoma. So if you're interested in learning more about RCA after today's webinar, feel free to inquire about our upcoming public course.
That's right. In Tacoma. It'll be our first one in Tacoma. And I saw that we have several people already signed up. And I'm excited about that. Normally, I don't know if anybody says, oh, I'm excited about going to Tacoma, but actually I am. We have a satellite office down there, and it's nice. And the town itself is great. Lots of cool places to eat, lots of fun stuff to do. And it's a little easier to access than downtown Seattle. So we're doing a little bit of an experiment. So anyway, all right. Well, so today's subject is return on investment. I have this is a subject that I really I want to say I guess I'm very interested in. I think I think that it's a difficult subject, to be honest, in terms of calculating ROI for this sort of thing. And I think what I'll say is that what makes it difficult is traditional return on investment. Like you buy a stock and then you hold it for a certain amount of time and then you sell it. Okay, well, let's say hopefully you sold it for more than you bought it for. Well, then you look at what the amount was, the difference between what you sold versus what you paid. You look at the amount of time that was there, and it allows you to calculate a percentage return on your investment overall. And then also you can annualize it and do all kinds of fun stuff with it. But those numbers are pure. And when we're talking about a return on investment in root cause analysis, for instance, I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at today: organizational learning, root cause analysis, failure modes, effects analysis. You're spending real dollars for that, and what are you getting in return, and how do you calculate those returns? And one of our big clients right now is budget season. Budget season means in August they are planning out what they're going to do in 2026. And a part of that, they have to go to the finance department and say, to justify the cost that they're going to spend with us. And so, and I guess justifiably, not to use justify twice in back-to-back sentences, but justifiably, they're going to be asked, what are we getting for this money? Are we just spending it with Sologic and everybody has a good time, and but it basically is just evaporating as soon as they spend, or are we getting something in return? And that's a tricky question to answer, frankly. And so that's what the subject of the webinar is today. And so I will give you just a little bit of info about Sologic in case you don't know about us. Ooh, look at this. I'm going to do this right now. As of last week, we are no longer based in Midland, Michigan. This is like a real-time edit. Here, let me see if I can do it. Yep. Let me do that and that. And then I'm gonna move that star right now. Here we go. I know you guys are so excited, but I'm actually really excited to do this. We are based in Seattle now, and as of August 1st, we have our office in downtown, and you can do it, Bri. Come on. There we go. It's Friday. You guys will forgive me for this little transgression here. I didn't realize I've been using the same map for so long that I didn't realize that I didn't have my oops, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here, but you guys get the picture. We're based in Seattle now, and I couldn't be happier about it. We still got a presence in Midland, and we have presence in Mexico City, Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, Hong Kong, New South Wales. Ooh, and I can't announce it officially just yet, but we have a new presence in the United Kingdom, and I am really excited about that as well. So I think the takeaway here is that Sologic is a global organization. And so what I would say is no matter where you are, we can go there too. I like to preface these webinars with a kind of a definition or a mental model around what a problem is. And a way to do this is this sort of black line, blue line exercise, which I learned from my buddies Todd Conklin and Andrea Baker and Bob Edwards. And maybe they didn't invent it, but that's where I learned it. I certainly didn't invent it, but I find it useful that when we have a goal, we want to get somewhere, we've got something that we want to do, but we're not there yet. We plan a pathway, or we have the imaginary, how we imagine achieving that goal is going to go. And invariably, we meander a bit. Okay, that's because of uncertainty. Uncertainty means I don't know what the future holds at any given time. And as much as I want, as I'd love to be able to plan it all out and have it go according to my plan, I may not have control over the uncertainty that sort of comes along with moving forward in time, right? So I have to adapt, I have to overcome, I have to adjust based on either gaps in my plan or gaps in my capability or things that came up that were unexpected. And I think that there's a bit of this that's normal in every project. Okay, but what happens when we go significantly outside of our planned path? In other words, it jeopardizes our ability to achieve our goal. Well, that's what we call a problem. Okay. And when we talk about organizational learning, and whether you're talking about root cause analysis or FMEA or human and organizational performance or resiliency engineering or blah, 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 all that stuff, what we're really trying to do there is to keep this sort of thing from happening. I guess we're okay with a little bit of this, right? A little deviation is okay as long as we still get where we want to go, and we're able to learn along the way. But these significant deviations are what we want to avoid, also what we want to learn from when they happen. And so when I use the term organizational learning, it's more of a blanket statement that or I guess a big bucket that you could put things like root cause analysis, FMEA, whatever, all that stuff. All of that stuff in there are forms of organizational learning, and organizational learning meaning the way that an individual learns and then the way that an organization learns. And so I think that to put this into context for today, I think that it's very important that an organization be able to understand that they aren't just spending money on their organizational learning programs, but they're actually investing that money, and they should expect to get a return for that investment. But how do you calculate that? And what does it even look like? And how is it different than the stock price example that I used a couple of minutes ago? And that's what we're going to be chatting about today. In organizational learning, I've also, if you've been to any of my past webinars, you know that I like this slide because it helps us sort of put things into context. So let's say that you've got a learning opportunity. All right. Well, a learning opportunity, the reason that we are going to, as individuals, invest in learning is so that we can make better decisions in the present. In this very moment, what we want to do is make the right call, right? Is it the right call? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the thing that I should be doing right now? Okay, so that's the idea. Because right here in the present, where this green dot represents on my timeline, is the only time that I can do anything. I can't do the thing in the future until the future becomes the present, and I can't undo what's already been done. So, by learning either retrospectively at what things have occurred in the past or by proactively anticipating what might occur in the future. That's what we do. That's all that Sologic does. And we write software to help us with that. We also develop and deliver training content and other forms other forms of content like this webinar, for instance, all in the towards the end of being able to help people make better decisions and thereby manage uncertainty with confidence. So hopefully all of that makes sense. In order to do that, we love to bring the concepts that we have learned from our friends who are experts in human and organizational performance, because what it does is it brings a team of people together, a diverse team of people with different knowledge, different experience, different brains, different ways of looking at problems. And then we get them together and we create an environment that's conducive for them to learn. We also add process. We have the ability to share and scale and then provide a reference for future learning. Okay, so the idea here is that if we bridge the concepts of human and organizational performance with the structured problem-solving techniques that Sologic provides and the tool set in the form of CosLink that Sologic also provides, then we get this holistic way of really helping people make better decisions in the present. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea as to sort of our reason for existing. And I think that's probably enough for now. All right. So let's do this. I would like to discuss a bit about, I'm going to go back to this diagram for a minute. And what we're going to be talking about today is return on investment. And why I think this diagram is interesting is that note that I've adjusted things a little bit to where the actual path sort of dipped below our minimum threshold. This is a slide from 2 weeks ago, if you were on 2 weeks ago webinar. The idea here is that that area between my threshold and the curve represents the unacceptable impact of the problem. Okay. And some problems, they don't have a lot of impact. Some problems actually do have quite a lot of impact, right? So when you think about problem to problem, when you're comparing how they unfold, well, impact is one of the things that we want to avoid or we want to minimize. Okay, so, and it also, believe it or not, is one of the factors in our return on investment calculation. So, in order to accurately calculate return on investment or to characterize it, because as you'll see, some returns are really not calculable because they aren't quantifiable. It's more of a qualitative return or a qualitative impact. So I want to be careful here to include the fact that some of these things we don't actually count in order to keep track of, but that doesn't mean that we don't consider reduction in risk as an acceptable and desirable return. But concept number one is problem burden. All right. Well, one of the ways to think about problem burden is this area under this curve. This represents the burden in both quantitative and qualitative forms that this particular deviation is causing the organization. Okay, so that's one form of problem burden. Well, here's another one, right? So if I go back here, this is a much smaller contribution of a deviation to problem burden. All right. So, but what if we added those two things together? What if these two events happened at different times? Well, and then by sort of extrapolating out, you think about your company where you work, my company where I work, whatever, organization, doesn't have to even be a company necessarily. You think about the collective impact of all the problems that they're experiencing, that they've experienced in the past, that they will experience in the future. And then if you can, it's a little bit of a mental trick to imagine the risk of those things happening in the future. And if you can sort of put a number on that, if you're not an insurance actuarial, that's okay. Those guys are good at it, right? But just think about all of the burden that we've experienced at our company, and so as the cumulative impact of all the problems that we've had, and then also the cumulative impact of the risk that we're exposed to, that is going to spawn the problems of the future. Okay, so think about that in terms of burden. And the word burden, I've chosen that on purpose, and the reason is because it's almost like a backpack full of rocks. Okay, we don't mind carrying the weight, but we want to get something out of it. But if you got a bunch of rocks in your backpack, well, there's just not a lot of reason for it. And it would be nice if we could put that burden down. Okay. Element number two, the cost of learning. Okay. Well, what that represents is an investment in learning. So when I was talking with you a second ago about this slide, well, it costs money and time, other forms of capital, I suppose, to pull people together, to train them, to buy software, to buy pizza for them if you're going to buy them lunch, which you should, to do all of the learning. There is a cost associated with that. Well, there's a cost also associated with the burden of individual problems. So both of these are costs in a sense. Like the burden itself is costing you, and then the amount that you spend to learn about the problem is another cost. Okay, but then so you gotta, and I'm gonna dig deeper into both of these, all three of them. And then the idea here though is that if we're going to be investing in learning because of the problem burden that we want to reduce, okay, then we need to be able to calculate the return on that. So hopefully all of that kind of makes sense. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig a little deeper into what I mean by problem burden and give you some ideas as to what this is. Now, what it's the ongoing costs of failures, errors, misses, and near misses. Yeah, no, I mean, it's probably a broader definition, but that should give you an idea of what it is. It is real. It is usually measurable, okay, and it does persist, and it also represents our opportunity. Now, if you're familiar with the Sologic root cause analysis process, here I'm going to pull it up real quick. In the second step, write the problem statement. You will know that that's where we document the impact of the problem, actual and potential. And so these categories would look familiar to you because we always look at safety. Was there some kind of a safety impact? Was there some kind of environmental impact? Was there an impact on quality of the products that we're making or the work that we've done, or the reliability of our machinery and our assets, or our ability to produce, or dot, 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 lots of different stuff, right? So the categories of impact that we see in the Sologic problem statement are helping us characterize and I guess put a figure to the individual problem burden impact of an issue that we're analyzing with root cause analysis. And it's the collective sort of ongoing cost of all of those things though that we're looking at. So we're scaling up, we're looking at it from a little bigger level. Like not necessarily the cost of an individual injury, okay? It would be more, what is the cost of safety at our company and overall over some period of time. Now, when we think about, I guess, pulling different types of impacts together in an RCA or zooming out and looking at different cumulative impact on an organization, it's helpful for us to sort of keep them on a scale. So what I did here, and like, there's not a right way to do this, but I think this is pretty cool because it ties into how we do impacts with failure modes effects analysis. I'd like to sort of maintain continuity whenever I can. Mm. What it allows us to do is okay, well, you had an injury the other day. On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad was it? Okay, well, what if that event also resulted in a delay in shipment Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad was that? Okay. So what I'm able to do when I'm scaling these, I'm kind of giving an idea for how bad they are, and also, if you think about it, how bad they could be. So this scale of 1 to 10, what I've done here is I'm going to conceptualize that on on this particular chart. Now, let me do this really quick. I'm going to, because I build these specifically for you guys, then sometimes I forget my animations, but I only ask that you forgive me on this is brand new, fresh tracks for you. So let's say that we had that we're looking at actual impacts here. Okay, and I've got my scale 1 to 10 over on the left, and then I've got 10 different kinds of impacts on the bottom. And let's say that that we had an event that had a safety impact of about a 4, or maybe an environmental impact of about a 7, or a quality assurance impact that looks like about 2.5, and so on and so forth, right? So actual impacts of events, they can be on a range. And so when we are when we're documenting the impact of a problem, well, we're just trying to accurately come up with how bad was it. But there's also a gap there between how bad was it and how bad could it have actually been. And I hope this line diagram, this is, I like just sort of came up with this idea today. I swiped this from looking at stock charts, I think like on like Yahoo Finance or someplace like that. But any of those places, when you're looking at daily stock prices, they'll show you the low, the high, and the close. And it kind of gives you an idea for how what was the swing during the day, and then where did it actually close. This is a play on that where the white X's are the actual impact, but then the red X is really how bad it credibly could have been. Well, why do I care about that? And then these curves come into play because I kind of think it'll be helpful for you to see these as curves. When we're documenting the actual impact of the problem, we are that's very important. We need to know how bad was it, and I need to have a way of, and I kind of like the scale over here that sort of puts everything on a similar scale. We don't really use a scale in CosLink, not at this point. And normally we wouldn't train in this way, but I needed a way to put all of these things together and then to be able to sort of show them on a common graph so that we could kind of get an idea for problem burden for one particular issue, or if you wanted to look at this overall, just think that it works both at a higher level as well as at an individual level. Okay, but so the white curve is what was the actual impact, but the red curve is how bad could it have been. And if you can help me out here, I didn't have a way of actually filling in with colors in between. That's a limitation of PowerPoint. But that gap represents risk. And so the white curve represents actual, the red curve represents what I'm calling the blast radius, or how big it actually could have gone. And note here under safety, this represents if you have a level 4 safety incident, okay? If I went back here and looked at our level 4 safety incident, something that is not too bad, something that we may want to look at, but not something where someone was severely injured, or even, maybe it was not really that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But what if the possibility was that they could have been killed? Why I'm This won't be the first time that we've talked about looking at spreads like this, actual versus potential. I think, though, that it's extremely important that we consider the spread. And the reason is because the causes of those events that meet the red line, in other words, the farthest reaches of the potential of the event, the causes are nearly identical as the causes of the events that represent the white line. They are not very different. often a difference in timing, a difference in magnitude, a difference in location, luck. Like really, if you were to map the direct causes of a near miss alongside or over the top of the causes of a direct hit, they're going to basically line right up. But the impacts are dramatically different. All right. Well, that's real. I think that people have a difficult time recognizing risk or potential as something that exists because it sort of, well, it doesn't exist, does it? Because it didn't happen. But it sure could have, but for a couple of different changes in the overall causal architecture of the event. And so when we're looking at managing risk and maximizing return, what that really gets to when we're investing in solutions and investing in learning, what we're doing is we're reducing risk. We're not guaranteeing that an event won't occur again. It's difficult to do. It's not impossible. You can push it outside of the possibility. And if the potential impact is bad enough, you may very well want to, right? That might be required as a part of that. But you have to be able to visualize and characterize the not only the actual impact, but also the potential impact in the point spread, because part of your return on investment is not only the reduction in the potential for this incident to occur, but if you think about it, if I'm acting on the potential here, am I not also acting on the potential here? And I need to be able to communicate that to leaders so that they recognize that, hey, it's not only the actual impact that we're reducing. It's not that simple. It's also the potential that we need to consider. So I'm going to dive off of this for now because I will come back to this in a minute. But I need you guys, if you're going to get the most out of this webinar, really do your best to bridge my gap here in communication because it's not the easiest thing to communicate. So hopefully you understand, kind of what I'm getting at. We don't just count what actually happened. We need to think about how bad it could have been. Okay. So here I needed a hypothetical because, well, I just don't have access to these numbers. But at real companies, and even if I did, they probably wouldn't let me share them in the webinar. So here's my hypothetical North River Industrial. Okay, so they're a mid-sized manufacturing and logistics company. They got 5,000 employees across 12 facilities. I mean, that's a pretty good size. All right. That's no joke. They earn $2.2 billion in gross revenue. That's about $440,000 per full-time equivalent or per full-time employee. It operates in a high complexity, moderate to high risk environment with recurring challenges in safety, quality, reliability, and production performance. And so while they have pockets of excellence, their learning systems are inconsistent and largely reactive. What does that mean? Well, that means that they have problems, okay? And when they do have problems, they are not very formal in how they go about solving them. And does that mean they're bad at solving problems? No. And in fact, they probably have some folks out of 5,000 people, there's probably some superstars that are very good at it. Maybe they brought their skills from somewhere else, or maybe they just naturals, they just get it. And so it doesn't mean necessarily that they're bad. It just means that they're not systematically good at it. And so they're leaving money on the table. But how much? So when I say that they make, they're a $2.2 billion company, about $440,000 in top line revenue per employee, then when they do have challenges in safety, quality, reliability, and production performance, what that means is that they have a problem burden that shows up in real problems that cross these categories. And the same problem can actually have impacts in multiple areas. They also have the risk of it being worse than what they're actually experiencing. So there's the spread there as well. Well, how is that impacting this company? Not only their performance in terms of top line revenue per employee or top line overall revenue, but also those things that we can't easily quantify. such as we don't want to hurt people. We just don't. And we want people to feel safe at work. We want to develop a good company culture. We want people to like working here. We want our customers to be satisfied. Well, what's the value of that? I mean, well, there might be real dollar values there, but there's also just the fact that having good relationships with your customers or your suppliers builds resiliency into your overall systems. Okay, so I don't need necessarily to put a dollar figure on all of that stuff to know that there's goodness there that I want to encourage and badness that I want to avoid, even if I can't put a dollars or I can't count it. All right. So kind of think about this company and then think about the fact that they're carrying around with them a backpack full of rocks. And if we are good at organizational learning, we're going to take some of those rocks out of that backpack and we're going to make life a lot nicer and easier for them. And what you're going to see there is not only that revenue per employee go up, or maybe that revenue as a measurement of efficiency, right? So revenue per employee, you're going to see that revenue go up. You may see that revenue go up. And the revenue, the top line revenue is not the only thing that'll be impacted, is it? Because if that top line revenue is not being consumed by problems, if we're not spending it unnecessarily on problems, well, you might actually see it grow on the top and then not going to spend as much in the middle, right? Therefore, leaving more at the bottom. So it really, there are opportunities at every level of the income statement here through an investment in organizational learning. Okay, so hopefully that characterizes a bit of what we're looking at here. So let's look at some numbers. All right. So, and these aren't just pulled out of thin air. Okay. These are pulled off of injury rates, and you can do some estimating here. So, like, let's say that you work for Boeing, or you work for United Airlines, or you work for Amazon, or something like that. Well, you probably have the data internally, maybe. But even if you don't, you can get some really decent data that's reported through the Bureau of Labor and Statistics that can help you with some of these numbers. Not all of them, but with some of them. Okay. But these are as realistic as I can make them for the webinar, where you're spending this North River Industrial Company is spending on average $1,500 per full-time employee per year on safety, with a total losses in safety of about $7.5 million. Is that too much? No way. If you start digging in, you'll see that I think that it's the ratio here. I bet that you would find that this is pretty realistic. Now, environmental, maybe a total of $3.5 million, or impact cost of quality, $5.5 million, or reliability and maintenance of $4.75 million, production impacts of $9 million. Okay, these are not like these look like big numbers to real people like you and me, but they are, they're not unrealistic. And so, what I would say is that maybe do an exercise like this in your own company, or give me a ring, I'll do it with you. And let's look at what these numbers actually look like in your company. But for this one, we're estimating problem burden per year of about $6,050 per employee, and that's just the things that we count. I'm not counting the things I can't count, okay? But I'm not forgetting them either. So overall, we're looking at about an annual problem burden of about 30 million, north of $30 million, okay? And that's not nothing. But if I'm not counting that the way that I'm counting it here, in a way that's credible, in a way that people will believe, right? So when I'm going to senior leaders and saying, hey, are you aware of the fact that you're basically just letting $30 million a year go down the drain? And wouldn't you like to have that back? I kind of think that the answer to that would be yes. But one of the things that we do not do very well in our field, and the people and clients, I mean, I clients as well, I don't think that any of us do a very good job at this, is we don't really characterize problem burden. We don't really estimate what the cost actually is. Well, then what that causes us to do is we only focus on the cost of the services. It's like, okay, well, hey, let's get Sologic training in there. Let's get Taproot training in there. It doesn't matter. This is something that this is a universal argument. It's not Sologic specific. It could be anybody. You guys want to bring Todd Conklin in for human and organizational performance training. You want to bring in Bob Latino for reliability training. You want to bring in you want to purchase some like intellects or Enablon or something like that. All right, well, this is all part of that equation because you got to know, like when you're just focusing on the cost side of it, well, there's a natural tendency to want to minimize that cost. But here's the secret. By minimizing cost and only thinking in terms of cost, then what you're doing is you're leaving a ton of opportunity on the table. And so by not recognizing safety as being a driver of profit, a driver of top line revenue, a driver of profitability rather than safety as being a cost to the company, a cost center. IT is often considered a cost center to the company, but try to make money without it. All right. So I feel like this is an area where we have done, in general, a pretty poor job at defining certain aspects of the business as cost centers and not as investments that are crucial to top line revenue. So the salespeople, they get the big expense accounts and they can drop 2 grand on a bottle of wine if it's for the right client because it's worth it. Because, hey, I'm adding the top line. And oh, by the way, you better pay me. I'm going to make a 30% commission on the sale because, without me selling this stuff, you guys wouldn't even be in business. It's like, yeah, well, if the employees feeling healthy and happy, you're not in business either. So it's not like sales and operations are the only ones that contribute to top line. So what this webinar, one of my goals here is to try to get you to consider the world that we live in as not only cost drivers that need to be minimized in order to preserve top line revenue, but that by investing in these areas and by winning in these areas and by reducing problem burden, you actually maximize the ability to you have an impact on top line rev as well as an impact on net income and margins because you're saving more of that top line revenue as well. So this is a mental state that I think that people in our area need to get their heads around, that we're not just talking about costs. Okay. So a graph or a simple table like this, go up to your CEO and say, hey, do you know that we're spending needlessly $6,000 on every employee on average because of the failures that exist around here? That's the kind of thing that gets people's attention. Now you better be ready with your backup, okay? Because immediately after that, like, prove it. Okay, well, so that's what we're doing. Here's a gig, though. Um, the when you think about like let's say we'll use Sologic, all right? So it's like, hey, we're fighting for some budget for Sologic training and software this year. And they're like, I don't know. Let's see if we can I know you guys want, you want like $500,000 this year, but I'm only going to give you $200,000, which, hey, well, that's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. But the idea behind that is, well, why would you underinvest when the opportunity is so great that actually by spending more, you will you're by not investing the threshold minimum, you are leaving a lot of money and the other things that we're not counting on the table. That's the idea there. Now, this could come across as me trying to get people to double their budgets. Well, Michelle would love it if this was the the result. I'm not doing, that's not my purpose, okay? But we're not going to turn away from that either. I think the problem here is that when you have a cost-centered mindset and you're looking at this sort of organizational learning as a cost driver that needs to be minimized, and I've literally I can't tell you how many senior leaders have told me this. I hope to never spend any money with you guys because then that means that everything is going as planned. Okay, excellent. I hope for that too, but the truth is that What's probably truer is optimally investing in anybody that provides organizational learning and then doing your part on the other side of it actually is such a smart investment because it improves that top line. They are already investing. That's the problem. How much are they investing? Well, they're investing $30 million a year in failures. They're investing 30, they're basically saying, yeah, I'm happy spending an extra $30 million a year and hurting a few people and all of the other stuff that's going on there. As long as I minimize my investment in organizational learning, then this is okay. And I know they're not saying that. It's just that we're not communicating it in a way that makes it crystal clear like that. And so I think this is a very important exercise. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be credible. Okay. And there's a difference between those two. And, I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole. But I think that people grossly underestimate the size of problem burden and how investing in it is going to help make it smaller. So that's me sort of setting up section number one, the cost of problems. And I think that's very important. So now let's shift and look at cost or the investment in learning. Okay. So if I were to go to, well, when we're on on a sales call with anybody, or when we're on a budget call with an existing client, invariably they're going to say, well, what's it going to cost me this next year? Or how much should I spend? Well, what are they spending their money on? Well, structured methods like Sologic or like whatever, any of us that provide these kinds of things. They are investing in trained people, right? These are upfront investments. They're investing in the tools like Coslink, like whatever, Enablon, Origami, Intellex, not to leave anybody out, IdeaGen. You're all part of it. I'm not picking favorites, okay? But investing in high quality tools that trained people use with structured methodologies. Leadership support. Okay, so we need to make sure that we've got the support of leadership, and there's a cost associated with that because well, what if you have a person whose job, their full-time job is supporting this program? Well, that's an investment. And also cultural trust, right? So we need to have support from the organization and we need to invest in that. And by the way, the investments aren't only dollars, although I'll keep it to the dollars here to kind of keep it clean, but we need to invest in what you see on this particular slide in order to basically reclaim some of that $30 million a company like North River would be needlessly sort of letting run down the drain. Okay, so these two elements here. Well, okay, so what does this look like without it? Well, when we don't invest earlier, okay, what this means, and I want to make sure that I try to explain this as clearly as possible. Over time, we are going to see the cost of our problem burden rise if we do nothing. That is basically, or if we just sort of have an ad hoc look to it, or an ad hoc response to things, or we're reactive. When we're reactively investing in problems, whether we're forced to spend the money on the problem, right? Like the 30 million in losses, plus forced to look at it after the fact. You know what? It's just we're still investing. We're just investing late. We're late to the party, and we are also not maximizing our return. If we invest earlier in a solid organizational learning program, tools, method, skills, leadership, etc., the things back on that slide I just showed you, what happens is not overnight. What happens first is your cost goes up as you I guess there's a year one sort of increase in cost because you're investing in initial capability, right? So, and you're probably not getting any traction because people are still new. There is not the program has not come up to speed yet to where it's not really throwing off returns. So that is a tricky time frame, is when you're investing earlier, but you're not seeing the returns. Why? Because well, people still don't know what they're doing. You can be trained and still be, developing their knowledge and skills. They could be investments in tying different pieces of software together so they talk to one another. And that's no joke. You get benefits after the fact, but that can take months, frankly. And so there's that time frame when it's like, oh my goodness, I'm spending all this money and I'm not really seeing any returns. But the thing is that when you invest earlier in capability, and then there's a caveat, you need to do it correctly and do it effectively. What you do see is not, you don't see losses go away, but you see an arc. You see the arc bending downward, and you see a reduction. And then if you maintain it year over year over year, you're gaining ground. So, over a 5-year period, now all of a sudden that investment starts to really pay off. A big problem that people have, though, in this is that if they didn't do a good job at this upfront, at characterizing and estimating and getting buy-in for what the value of these problems is costing the company, the cost of a program like this is real, okay? And you can see it and you can actually look it up because there's invoices to back it up, among other things. Well, if you're not doing a good job at this, and then watching it over time, then you won't see the arc bend. Okay, it's harder anyway. So you got to know what's the full story here, and how do I need to be tracking this stuff along the way so that when it does bend and when it does arc down, and it will because it has to, because an organizational learning program will impact risk, it will reduce risk. And then if you have credibly and effectively reduced risk, then all it takes is time to show that the benefit of that reduction in risk may not show up overnight. So this does take some fortitude. You might have to have several cycles, to where you really see that reduction in risk take hold. But it absolutely happens. And so this is what the real results look like, but then how do we calculate those? So let's go back to North River. They got 5,000 employees. All right, well, what if we told them, and we probably would tell them something like this. We use a heuristic about, so we would say that, you know what, everybody in the company needs some level of organizational learning training. And it's true. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be computer based. Be nice if if they attended an hour or two of human and organizational performance training, or structured problem solving. There's a variety of different things, but basically, telling people that, hey, we're a learning organization, and explaining their role and what they might be called upon to do um, in uh, uh, in that learning organization. And everybody needs some level, some kind of training in that area. But then you're going to have maybe 10% of your workforce that needs some kind of additional facilitator training. So what I've got listed out here is 500 of those 5,000 people, or 10%, having them go through. And I'm using our specialist training here because it's our 2-day training, 2 or 3 days. And then I used our real numbers too, so you can see what this would cost. So then about 10% of them, we would want to create subject matter experts. And you could make the case actually that maybe they want to do some certified instructor training, which I didn't put into here. And then they have a single champion. All right, but I use these numbers because it's kind of the rules of 10. 10% have get to facilitator training, 10% of them to that subject matter expert. We got to leave room for one champion, and then everybody getting some form of organizational learning. And if we could get everybody to do this, we would. All right, well, let's see what that would cost. Awareness training, about $200 a person. Okay, so about $1 million in awareness training. Oh my goodness, who do I think I am asking for $1 million for that? But I'm asking for it. Specialist training, about 850 a person for 500 people is about another 425,000. Master training, another 850 per person. So, that would be another 42,500. And then let's just put some consulting and support in there. And on-site consulting work for us these days is 450 an hour, which seems like lawyer rates, but it is, but we're worth it. And so let's throw 400 hours there, so maybe $180,000, and there's a Sologic people available to you on site doing your stuff. And so then let's put a unlimited CosLink enterprise license out there as well. CosLink enterprise license, software as a service, currently running $160,000 a year. That's not a small number. $1.8 million on a 5,000 person company. And I'm going to tell you right now that I don't think that there's a single 5,000 person company that spent $1.8 million in year one. But I think that that's part of the problem. It's a lot of money, but is it worth it? And so if we're asking for this, then how are we justifying this? Well, in year two, we're looking at, because this represents sort of the big part of, getting the initial capability up to speed. Year two and beyond is a lot cheaper, almost a quarter what it would be. And so, but you got to think about that because you're going to have turnover. You're going to have some refresher training that needs to be done. There's going to be less support, but you're still going to have your annual software license, right? So you're going to see costs go up in year one and then drop in year two and beyond, because you move into more of a maintenance mode. But they don't drop to zero. It's the ongoing investment. Okay, but let's remember that when we're talking about returns, that and so this is an estimate. In year one of that $30 million, we might not have any impact. We probably will, but I'm assuming conservatively that we probably don't, because well, there just hasn't been the time for them to have a meaningful impact on problem burden. And so, all right, so let's just say that year one we got nothing, but year two we get a 15% reduction in problem burden. This is pretty conservative, okay? So, and it, I think it's reasonable. So I feel like in putting this out there, like because of the size of the problems and because of the also the effectiveness of what we're learning to do here, I don't think it's irrational to say that we could shave 15% per year off of our overall problem burden. And so then if you push this out for 5 years, okay, well, now you've got your problem burden that is credibly reduced nearly in half, okay? And what did we invest for that? Over 5 years, you would invest about $3.5 million in order to achieve a net savings of $35.6 million. That is a good return on investment in anybody's book. And you could be like, oh my goodness, Brian, you cooked this up to make it look like we should just invest millions of dollars with Sologic, which you should do. You should do that, but you shouldn't like that's not my point. Invest it with Taproot. I don't want them to earn that money, but I'd rather you invest it with them and try to earn some return with them, or invest it with anybody that does what we do. Invest it in organizational learning and do your homework and consider us in the mix. And if we win it, then we won it. Okay. But if we didn't, don't spend the money anyway. That's my point. Is that I think that because companies are dramatically underestimating the value of problem burden, and that they don't recognize just how effective a, a significant investment in organizational learning can be, that they are leaving a lot of money on the table. A lot of money on the table. And now let's get out of the money thing. It's not even that, right? So think about the things that we can't count, because for that $3.4 million, you're getting those benefits too. Increase in safety, increase in trust, increase in quality, increase in reliability, all right? All kinds of stuff. And so I believe that over 10 or over 5 years, to have a 10x return is completely doable. Completely doable. Why aren't companies achieving this? I think for two reasons. Because they are underestimating the value of the problem burden, and also they have a cost-centered mindset instead of an investment-centered mindset. And they are thinking, I need to minimize. Oh my God, I spent $3.5 million over 5 years on what? It's like, yeah, well, take it all the way. You didn't spend it, you invested it. And because you invested it, you not only earned better top line, a larger top line, you kept more of it, so your margins looked better too. And so if this seems like a lot of accounting speak, it is. And I think that accountants and finance people should be a part of this conversation. And they really, far too rarely are they. So let's get a visualization here. Or I know it's a little confusing. I promise I'm
Well,
like,
Brian, we have 5 minutes to until the end of
yeah,
webinar. I wanted to open up to questions to see if anyone was interested in discussing more of the method that Brian brought up or
I
wanted to
got two.
challenge him.
I have two more slides and I'll be quick about it.
All
So,
right.
so if this is our initial, and then this is what it looks like after the fact, it's this gap between, remember we talked about the value of the risk, and then when we see organizational learning bend that curve, then this is what we get for a return. And now we're good for questions. Questions or comments. And I'm happy to stay on longer too, although we will formally wrap on time. This is a little bit of a tricky conversation, but I I think that it applies to every single person that's on the call. And if you're like, oh, I don't want to ask these questions in front of everybody on the webinar, I totally get that too. You've got our email addresses at the bottom, and I would be more than happy to discuss this or to, take this general model and apply your own numbers to it. And or you can do that on your own too, but I would encourage you to do it. All right. Well, if there aren't questions, it is nice here in the Great Pacific Northwest. And so I hope you all have a great weekend. And what's Michelle, is our next webinar? Let's look.
In 2 weeks.
Excellent. Yeah, it's going to be, oh yeah, how do I ensure RCA findings lead to actionable outcomes? Well, that ties in with this. So that'd be fun to see you there. We've got the rest of our webinars for the year up on the schedule, and so would encourage you to come and share and share the webinars with others that you think would like them. And also, we have our past recordings. This one will be up soon. And so if you know somebody that missed this or you want to do a repeat, no problem, right? So all of our webinars are recorded, and I'm doing my best to write long form blog entries for each one of them. I'm a little behind, and but I will commit to getting caught up on those as well. So good. Well, with that, then let's see. There is a Q&A. Ah, Yulia, thank you. So from Yulia Koroblova, I'm really glad that you liked it. Thank you. I'm glad you liked the delivery too. I mean, professional, that's stretching it for me. Seriously, like I do my best. I took my baseball hat off.
All
Great.
right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend ahead.
Yeah, everybody have a good one. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.